All right. Hey guys, I wanted to introduce to you the developer's compass. So essentially what I want to do is I want to go through all of the lessons that we have learned over the years as developers and really kind of go through each deal and then talk about the good parts, the bad parts, and basically pull apart what went right and what went wrong. So a lot of you guys know me. A lot of you guys know that I went from zero to $100 million worth of deals very, very quickly. But a lot of you also know that we made some critical mistakes and it didn't end up working and we went under during COVID. So I just wanted to do a series which is going to talk about all of them. And the first one up in the series is our very first deal. So basically, we will go through that today. So, first deal. Um, we made $294,000 equity uplift and $25,000 passive income from the first deal. So that's pretty good. For someone's very first deal, that's pretty good. So the total outgoings was 1.54 and well, that's what we estimated. The final cost was 1.58. So that ends up being a $294,000 uplift. We did expect a $336,000 uplift. So we were about $40,000 over budget. That is actually not too bad. However, in the world of development and in the world of investors, you cannot be over budget ever. So basically, we were about 40 grand over budget. Um, However, not bad. All right. So, what the idea was is it was a joint venture. So there was a money partner, and then there was me as the working partner. We went and bought a vacant block of land in Brisbane in a suburb called Morningside. It was 600 square meters. We split it straight down the middle. It was 15 meters wide. So we split it into two 7.5 meter wide blocks, and then we built two rooming houses on it. So we bought this block of land for 550. We ended up with two 303 square meter lots. So 303 square meter lots when we went and did this was kind of a new thing. The minimum lot size in Brisbane is 400 square meters, so we did well to get them on such small blocks of land. I'll teach you how we went and did that first. So in a second. So my role was to source and manage the entire project while the partner provided all the necessary capital. He purchased it, he was the one who was paying the bills, and I was the one who found it, and I was the one who came up with the concept, and I was the one who was running it for him. Profits were meant to be split 50-50. So out of that 294, we were supposed to get 50-50 each, which is about 150 grand. And originally we started out that I was going to own one of them and then he was going to own another one. All right. So how it all started. So this is me on the left. I don't know how old I am there. I think I'm roughly around 22, something like that. But basically, it all started because I was going to property seminars. Essentially, I got told that I could replace my income, which was very, very attractive to me. I was a bricklayer. I hated being a bricklayer, and I hated essentially being a worker. I never liked the concept. Went from getting expelled at school to essentially having to go to the workforce, and I was not happy about that. So I wanted to replace my income. So I started going to these property events. And because I was so young and because I was so keen, I started getting noticed by the people who ran the events. And they had a competition. And essentially it was like, see this girl who's next to me? That's Dimpna Boholt's daughter. So essentially, she wanted to make a competition where she'd put her daughter in it and then get a bunch of other people from around the country and train us up and then see how far we can get in 18 months. So, um, that was really good for me. That was really good because I started getting recognized. I was up on stage. People thought it was super inspirational, and basically, this is Dimna Bohold there, and I'm hoping you can see my mouse. And essentially, she's using us as kind of like marketing, and I was using this as kind of like marketing at the same time as well. So there's me, and then like we're up on stage doing like all sorts of talks and stuff like that. However, there was a problem with this. I had never done a deal before. Um, I was a qualified bricklayer, and I had done Cert 4 in building and construction, and I'd done Dimner's course, and I used to show up to all the seminars in a suit, and I was often on stage, and I would ask questions at every seminar. So it would just be like, "Hi, Dimner, you said this about something. What is the answer to that?" And then I'd always have like a plug in there about, "Oh, I'm looking for joint venture partners." However, it did lead to a little bit of trouble. So the trouble was is that I was very, very good at marketing. So essentially I found 75 potential investors, which is like it's a little bit of a stupid statistic. So realistically, if you talk to about 10 to 20 people, you're probably going to get one of them who is legitimate. Not saying that they're not legitimate investors. However, I'm saying that like for them to do a deal with you where you're going to run it and for it to be they can afford it and for them to be happy with everything, probably about 1 in 20 people is legit. So I was focusing very, very hard on finding investors. I need to find investors. However, the problem was is that I didn't know what I was actually going to do with them, and I wasted a lot of time. However, if you remember, I've got 18 months to beat this girl, and I am ultra competitive, so I really needed to figure something out. So. I got the advice that deal first. Like it doesn't matter about talking to these people if you don't know what you're going to do. Like it's you could have all the investors in the world and no idea, and then that equals nothing. So I chose to do a splitter, and basically a splitter deal in Brisbane. Usually a typical splitter is a 809 square meter block. You subdivide it, you end up with two 405s. I have no idea how you gain a square meter, but you do. And that is a very typical splitter in Brisbane. So essentially, Brisbane is got multiple land sizes. They're usually 405s, 506s, 607s, or 809s, or 1012s. You sometimes got 1100 and something, and you sometimes get 1214. But usually it's the same blocks just added. So like 1214 is two 607s, 809 is two 405s. Um, and essentially what a splitter is just splitting a block in half. Sometimes you don't need to subdivide it, sometimes you do. But they were very, very trendy and everyone was keen to do them at this point of time. So I really wanted to find one of these. This was 2017. And the reason I liked them was because of quick time frame, they're easy, they're beginner friendly, and then I would have clarity. And they were also marketable. So if you do a good deal where you're going to go convince it to investors, investors like stuff like this. There is certain deals which investors like, there are certain deals which investors don't like. And like if you put that into your strategy, that makes a very, very big difference. So basically gave me clarity and it would be done within the 18 months time frame. So I can take down Sam Boholt, remember her? So basically that is what I chose to do. However, the problem was is that I could not find one which worked. Back then, buying a block of land in Brisbane where you could, there was a 809, usually cost about $900,000. And essentially, what's it called? Couldn't find one. And this is what the figures essentially ended up being. So basically, if we were to buy one for $1 million, and then spend 700 grand per build on it, and what's it called? Do the subdivision, all that sort of stuff. It would cost about 2.8, and then it would be worth about 3, which you want to really make over 20%. Some people go a lot lower for deals which are easy. I don't think that that is a good idea. I think you should be trying to make over 20%, and it is definitely possible to do it. However, yeah, it's very, very hard to find these things which work. The thing which makes it hard is because they're popular, and if they're popular, what ends up happening is people go, okay, I'm happy to buy the block for more. And then stuff like builders. So a builder might be happy to buy the block for $200,000 more than you, and they're not making money out of the subdivision, and they're making money out of the build, and that puts you in a tough position. So I'm frustrated, right? I've gone through this journey about like trying to find investors, and like we were going around in circles. Now I found a deal and now I can't find one. Very, very typical for a beginner, thinking it's going to be easier than what it is. And if you are a beginner and you are finding it incredibly easy, I need you to go and think about it, because it's probably you're doing something wrong, because this is a hard thing to go and figure out. Um, so I got more advice, and the advice was basically what is everyone else doing? So I went and had a look at those splitters, and I was really confused to see that like a lot of these projects which were getting done were not good, and they were still getting done. And there's just like background things, like they might be builders, they may have owned it for a long time and all that sort of stuff. So just because someone is doing something to, oh, they might just be dumbasses. And essentially, just because they're doing it doesn't mean that it's going to work. So I was taught how to reverse viso other people's deals. And essentially what that would mean is that we would go onto the internet and basically find deals which have been complete. Then we would go and reverse visa, and we would use RP data to figure out what they bought it for. We would use the council website to figure out who the team was. We'd find out who the builder was through all of that sort of stuff. We'd call them, we'd ask them, what would you do different? How much did it cost? All that sort of stuff. And we're putting together reverse feasibilities of all of these deals. And essentially, what I figured out is a lot of people were doing 600 square meter splitters, which is at that point in time, it was new. And what they had gone and done is they said they will allow someone to go and split a 600 square meter block of land into two if it's within 200 meters walking distance to a center zone. And essentially that opened up a whole bunch of new blocks, and that was because it was new. It meant that the people who were just mindlessly buying the 809s were potentially not a part of this. So this is an example of a reverse FISO on the side. Essentially, I got a spreadsheet, and what I go and do is I just go and, okay, here's a new deal, and then I go ask all of these questions. I do a FISO on it, and then I just do that over and over and over and over and over again. It is one of those things like going to the gym. You need to get used to it, and it takes time. But you get better at it, and then you can start to learn who is doing good deals, who is doing bad deals, who should you copy, and who should you not copy. Um, so essentially, here's an example. So proposed property type, original land size, block width, end land area, original zoning. And then like you go, what the hell? They just split a 607 into two 303s, but the minimum lot size in Brisbane is 405. How did they do that? And then you go through the DA application, and you can see that they're talking about the fact that it's 200 meters walking distance to a centre zone, and then you can call the town planner who lodged the form, and then essentially just say, how did you do that? And then they tell you how, and then basically you call the builder, you figure out what the build cost, and then basically you go from there. So this is a reverse FISO of the deal that we actually did. So we bought it for 550. It cost us 770 to do the build, and sale prices were 940. We found out who the builder was, the town planner, the civil engineer, the architect, the surveyor. We did the FISO. And then if you have a look at the FISO here, um, buying for 550 now instead of buying for 900. Constructing for 800. However, it ended up being 700 and 70. And total costs is 1.4 5.4, which is a $332,000 equity uplift, which is very, very similar to what we had on the very, very first slide, what our estimate was. Ended up being a $293,000 uplift. But that's about 40 grand over. So if you remember that where we were about 40 grand over. So we realized that this actually makes over 20%. Uh, right. So this is an example of the 600 square meter subdivisions that you can do. This is kind of old news now. However, if you are going and doing these reverse visos, what you can find out is like, for example, another one in the Gold Coast is 4 packs of townhouses. The maximum site coverage on 4 pack of townhouses is 50%. However, you're noticing that everyone's doing 59%. You notice that everyone's actually getting relaxations on the setbacks. You notice that people are doing 3 stories in 2 story zones. It's impact accessible, but you notice that they're actually getting them through. So what is really good about this is when you go and do these reverse visos, you can find out what everyone else's essential tricks are. You can find out who their teams are. You can find out how much it costs. And this is the sort of stuff which will give you that new sweet idea. So 187 meters walking distance to the center zone. The center zones were blue. And we could split these 600 square meter blocks. So if you have a look at all of these, they're all being done. Um, and it has to be there is a few rules which will catch you out. 200 meters isn't very far. It's like, what's it called? If you're talking about a 15-meter frontage, it's like 10, 15 of them. So 15 houses away from the shops. Another thing which is bad is that it needs to be the whole frontage. So like essentially, if you were doing this one where it has a number 1 on it here, you would have to go all the way to this far corner. And yeah, that if you don't, then it starts going into impact accessible sort of stuff. And realistically, I want to stay away from that. Another bad thing is that if there is traffic lights, right, which are like, let's just say we're on this block here, and then there is traffic lights, um, down here, you might have to go back to the traffic lights, cross the road, and then come across here, and then you might not make the distance. So it needs to be walking distance and it needs to be across like the legal walking places. So we figured out that numbers worked much better on splitters. So 22%. So what was really good is that these weren't in high demand. So an 800 square meter block was just, you couldn't get one. Even if you did figure out where they work, it's just that you wouldn't be able to buy one. Um, I could probably buy them now that I have credibility. However, back then I wasn't able to. So we bought it. However, we struggled to settle on this for it being vacant land. Even though it was really, really cheap, it's because it was vacant land, it meant that we didn't have the serviceability requirements on it. We were really kind of pushing hard to get this deal across the line. Like we were novices essentially, and $550,000. It was pushing hard back then. So construction cost was way cheaper back then, like way, way cheaper. So 770 they cost about 600 grand each these days. So and that's still pretty good, like to be honest, for a 5 bedroom rooming house, that's pretty awesome. So site was on a main road, so it was much less attractive. It was 200 meters walking distance center zone, so that was good. And this is the reason why we went with rooming houses. So because it was on the main road, it was less attractive. If you had to go on and put a normal house there, it wouldn't have worked. And the other good thing about rooming houses is the end value is based on a cap rate. So that means that we can sell it as essentially like a commercial property and then we can get an inflated value at the end because of how much it rents for. So it rents for $2,000 a week. That's $104,000 a year. So at an 8.5% cap rate, it's like 1.15 to 1.2, where the house next door might be worth 900. So that was really, really good. Um, the average investor wants passive income. Income is such a crazy thing where people are imagining going and getting passive income, sitting at the shops, drinking coffees, doing nothing. And that is what the desire is. That is what my original desire was. It was just like, screw this. I'm not going to work my whole life. I'm going to go get passive income. And the last thing is that you don't need style. What you're doing with these is just basically making studio apartments, and they're pretty easy. And it's kind of like uh, what's it called? They get what they're given because they can't afford more, sort of thing. As brutal as that sounds. So basic numbers, if we didn't do rooming houses, so a brand new house probably worth about 750 back then, which is nuts. It's be worth so much more now. Which means it would have made a loss of 26,000. So because we were doing rooming houses, they were worth 940, and because they were doing normal houses, it would have been worth 1.5 because they were on the main road and like it was not a desirable sort of place. So the first lessons creating the joint venture was very painful. So basically what we did was essentially have a conversation with the lawyer present, and then the lawyer went and made something, and then we swapped it, like we changed it over and over and over. I was actually pretty easy going. I didn't really I was just stoked to not be bricklaying, like sort of thing, or at least on the way. And it was just difficult. So these days we do things a lot differently. We have like we just cautious of lawyers just trying to everyone like I say this is what development is like. So just imagine a deal is a bag of chips from like a fish and chip shop. So you go and buy it and then you've got it, and then every single person who is involved. So you got your builders, your tradies, you got your people who do the civil engineering, all that, are trying to get as much of those chips as possible. And what your goal is essentially to make sure that you are left with the biggest pile of chips as possible. And yeah, if you're not freaking like if you're not uh, you could get taken advantage of for sure if you're not confident. So we do things very, very differently, but the joint venture was painful. Another thing which was really hard for me to deal with was the fact that I was not really bringing a huge amount of value, at least I believed internally. So there was a lot of stuff which I had to work on in my mindset to even just be able to go and do this. Like, why would someone want to do a deal with me? Like, I've never even done a deal, and all that sort of stuff, which I find a lot of people do struggle with. A lot of people don't know that they struggle with it. That's what the biggest problem with mindset is they're just like, yeah, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, and then just like a year goes by and they haven't done it. Just think about people losing weight. They're just, yeah, I want to get in shape, and they do absolutely everything except for losing weight. And basically, there was a lot of emotional baggage which I brought to this. And another thing which made it harder was the fact that my bloody business partner was a qualified project manager. So he was very, very good at this. So that was quite hard. So this is why it's critical to know exactly what you're doing. So during our reverse FISO process, we found a team. We already knew who the builder was going to be because we had done so many reverse FISOs on so many different deals. What that meant was essentially we were going, okay, this is the people who are doing all the subdivisions. Like we've gone and done 100 reverse feasibilities. So that means that these are the people which are really good at subdivisions. We knew who the town planners are. These are the ones who were split in 600 square meter blocks. We knew who the builders were. We had picked on what sort of build we were going to do. We had gone and walked through them. So because we knew that, that was really, really good. The reverse feasibility part of this is probably the most important part. If you can master reverse feasibilities, that is a very, very good asset. So, the project manager, JV partner, also had a lot of experience as well. So that was really, really good. Um, so things which went well is that we really leaned on the builder slash town planner. And we chose a very easy deal. So that was a good idea as well. So basically, I wanted to do something which was easy and fast. If I'd have gone and done 4 townhouses, this would have been considerably a lot harder. So doing something which was easy was really, really good. It took the DA was approved in 9 days. However, that's marketing crap from the government saying, "Oh, we aren't putting up roadblocks to development," which is absolute bullshit. Um, the freaking councils are like, yep, 9 days. However, what they go and do is they make you get every single document which is known to man, and then once you've got that, then you can apply for this 9 day thing. And if they do have that, then they approve it. So it takes roughly around the same amount of time because they make you get all the documents. However, it makes them give themselves a pat on the back for being progressive and good for the world. But DA was approved in 9 days. That's something you can put on your Facebook and say, yeah, DA approved in 9 days. I just realized I went on a massive rant about that. Sorry, I don't like councils very much. Anyway, so it took 5 months and 2 days from beginning of the DA to the building approval, which is actually pretty decent. We were going pretty freaking hard on this, which was good. We got the houses approved as standard houses and then converted them to rooming houses at frame stage. This got us out of I can't remember what it got us out of, but it meant that we had a lot less eyes on what we were doing. Essentially, council hates rooming houses. Brisbane City Council is a little bit different. However, if you did Moreton Bay, and you did Gold Coast, you did Logan, they hate rooming houses. We just fought Moreton Bay for like 6 months on a rooming house deal, and they hate them. So just be very cautious about that. So we did very well on time frame. The builder and the town planner were very good, which is awesome. Things which are difficult. A little bit hard to get so much value from our builder and then still get multiple quotes. So when we're getting leaning on them and saying, "Hey, we want you to, how do we do this? How do we do that?" and they're helping us out, we also still want to keep them basically accountable by going and getting multiple quotes. And when we go and do that, essentially, it's critical. What you really need to be good at is just having these difficult conversations. If you go and hide the fact that you're going and doing this and they find out, that's worse than you telling them that, look, I've got investors, I have to do this, and basically go and just have those hard conversations. It was hard, the finance partner being more qualified than the working partner. It definitely was. We were very efficient. However, there were still items which could be refined. Yeah, I think we did quite well. We required more money to complete the project, so we underestimated how much money that we needed. This is a very, very massive thing. So, this is the reason that Beanstalk went down, is essentially if we had more money, we would have been okay. So that is something which I really want you guys to think about very deeply. How much money have you got? Because we required a little bit more. We did well in the way that what we did is we subdivided the block of lands. We went and got them revalued. We got an equity uplift. We used that for the build deposit, which is good. The less money that you can put in, the better. The less money that you can put in, the bigger the cash on cash return is. So the build cost was originally above budget. So that 770 was not the original figure. And we had to go and redesign them. And we made them smaller. And we also removed the garages and had just open air car parking out the front. And that was a big part of it. So how we solved the financial problem was I was supposed to be purchasing one of the rooming houses. However, something made that not possible. I can't remember what it was. I think it was I was working as a contractor, as a bricklayer at this point in time. I can't remember, but whatever it was is it didn't, I wasn't going to be able to do it. Um, we sold my half of the rooming house to another investor. So I went and found another investor and I fixed that problem, which was good. So here are the figures. So basically, pre-purchase costs 9054, purchase cost 571, and basically town planner, sundry development costs, local government fees and state government fees. It ends up being about 70, 80 grand back then for a subdivision. So those words equal subdivision. Miscellaneous costs 31,000. We went and spent a bunch of money on things like what's it called, going and staying at hotels and stuff like that. Like my partner was from Melbourne and I was from up here. So he came up and stayed at it. We weren't spending excessively, but I think we went and bought a course as well. I think we went to Tony Robbins or something like that. Um, Construction costs 846. So that was the biggest part. So the way that builders can really get you is they say that it's going to cost 770 and then a 770 plus site works or a 770 plus landscaping. The biggest thing which is crazy about this one is it was plus air cons. For some reason the air cons wasn't included. Um, but 846, that's where the majority of the 41,000, which was over budget, was. Interest repayments 30 grand, pretty good. Rates 2,900, taxes 18,000. So this 294, by the way, is after taxes, which is really really good. So it required 420,000 in cash and serviceability of 550. So if you're just blanketly copying this, that was had a bit to do with the fact that we refinanced in the middle of the subdivision to be able to get that done, and we also got a little bit of a cash injection when I sold the one side to the other person. So just keep that in mind. I will do a disclaimer about rooming houses at the end though. With a budget blew out, construction price 36 grand over. So out of the 41,000, the construction price was 36,000 over. For some reason the air cons weren't included, which was 13 grand, which is crazy. It's crazy because I'm getting seven air cons right now for much less. However, not much less, similar sort of figure. However, they're down in Melbourne, and this is up in Queensland. Queensland needs air cons, and Melbourne doesn't. Melbourne needs air cons every now and then. Added solar, like this was me being a young, impressionable person trying to get into a deal. Realistically, the solar was probably not a deal cost. It was this guy wanted solar on his house. He added it into the figures. And usually tax isn't a deal cost either. Usually you go and split the thing 50-50 and then you go and pay your taxes however you do them. So there was a little bit of I was young and impressionable back then. We had to redo some civil work, so 400 bucks. Rest was for the flights, accommodation, stuff like that. Timeline. It took 1 year, 3 months, and 7 days. So we bought it on the 12th of the 4th, so April 2016. We finished it on the 19th of July 2017. This is the backyard with courtyards. This is in a rooming house. So this room would have had a bedroom and an ensuite as well. So you get like a little living area, backyard, bedroom, ensuite. All right. So the final issue, as I sold my share to a new investor, we ended up in a position that the only way for me to get paid was to either refinance the original investor or sell the project. Because he did not want to sell it, we got stuck in a position where I could not get paid. Um, so essentially, what that meant was his opinion was basically that. Because I sold my share, then I'm done. And basically, I can't remember if I got paid from the new person or not. This was quite a long time ago, and I've done a lot of deals since, and I don't hold any resentment towards it. But back then, I was pissed. And basically, we got to the end, and I didn't get paid. I think I did get paid a little bit when we refinanced that guy in. Um, but realistically, the finance partner was a project manager and he did take over a little bit. Like to be honest, like he was very, very good at being a project manager. So essentially what's it called, got to a position where because it was a cash flow deal and he didn't have any serviceability to refinance out the rest, it meant that I would either have to force him to sell it and get money that way, or I would have to force him. And I didn't have the money to do that. So I was at a position where I realized that if you want to sue someone, then you need money for it. And I didn't really have the guts as well. I didn't really know whether I was on the line or not. So reflections on this. Quite a strong deal. I do reflect about this. If I had have stayed on rooming houses, I see a lot of the people who do rooming houses now, and I'm like, mate, I would have flogged them. That is a cocky thing to say. However, I think a big part of how we ended up going from zero to 100 million back to zero again is because of changing around, changing strategies. And if I could have figured out a way on how to make this work a little bit better, then maybe that was a better idea. So interesting. Quick time frame. I like that. Solid team, low risk, quite easy. Um, a different partnership arrangement would have suited this much better. So the way that I would have structured this now, would have been probably that I would be a development manager. And what that means is that I'm tied to it as a contract. However, the purchaser goes and purchases it. They're the ones who go and spend all the money as before. However, they also pay me to find it. They pay me to go get the DA. They pay me to get the DA. They pay me to do the building approval. They pay me to do that. It would be a much lower rate than 50% of the profit. However, that's how I probably would have structured it now. And it meant that we would have got to the end and you would be doing it as a consultant instead of doing it as a investor slash interested party. So these houses would also be worth 1.3 million now, which is cool. So 940 back then. So that was 2017, and now they're worth about 1.3. Um, Rents would be about 450 a week now instead of 340, so rents have gone up a lot. I'm still happy with how it turned out. Like I got a lot of value from it. I got to get into the next deals. I got to do all that sort of stuff. I didn't replace my income and I wasn't sitting on it at a cafe. However, I'd got a lot of education. So like people sell educational courses for like 5, 10, 15, 20 grand. However, this would have been worth a lot. So the fact that I was quite upset that I didn't get paid. I'm not saying people shouldn't get paid, but people who are starting out should reflect and realize that they are absolute beginners and basically getting into a deal, getting a run on the board, having something in your portfolio is worth it. So think about that very deeply. If you can't get a deal over the line because you can't negotiate, something like that, just realize that if you went and got into a deal, then that is something you can talk to others about, and that might get you into another deal. All right, so I moved on to chunk deals after this. Reason I moved on to chunk deals was because I'm like, okay, if you can't refinance positive cash flow, which was and like I'm more educated than that now. I know there's certain things you could do. I just found that okay, if we're gonna do something, we're gonna build a bunch of things, sell them, then I'll get 50%. And like now I think back about it and I hate the whole JV arrangement. I would much prefer to get paid along the way and then they can do whatever they want with them at the end. All right. Leaning on the builders and town planners is a very good move. Reverse visos, that is 100% over these next videos, I want you to get that in your head. That is freaking sick. If you can learn how to do reverse visos and I can teach you how, then that is awesome. Deals first and investors second. That stops the fluff. There's a lot of fluff. Joint ventures on projects are hard. I don't like that structure. I would teach you how to do a different structure. We could have made the house better looking. It was pretty ugly. Don't know if I got a photo of it, but it was pretty ugly. Oh, and final words. If you're watching this and then thinking, okay, if I want clarity, I may as well just go and copy that, the rooming houses. I'd be very cautious of rooming houses right now. So we were a part of 13 rooming house deals in the last 15 months in this sort of area. And what I'm seeing right now is like when we started doing, we started with the idea of doing rooming houses to sell, and then getting paid along the way, like I was saying. However, what we're finding is that there is so many rooming houses for sale in Brisbane right now. And what it is doing is it's bringing down the end value and it is bringing down the rents. So the government have gone and made it a lot easier. Everyone has jumped in, and now the um, the profit is leaving. It's like the splitters where I was talking about in the beginning, where once something becomes too popular, it no longer works. So developments kind of work for a season and then they become too popular. Once it really works, it becomes real popular. A huge crowd comes, they start ruining it. Not not ruining it. We're providing affordable accommodation and it's going down, so it's working. But I'm not doing rooming houses in Brisbane right now. If any of you want to know, there is currently 45 blocks of units for sale in Brisbane. And I remember looking at it like 2, 3 years ago, and there was three for sale. So keep that in mind. If you want to go and sell these things, it might be very hard. All right. And another thing which we're coming out with. So realistically, going from zero to $100 million worth of deals and then back to zero again. Um, I've learned a lot. And what we're doing is we're creating a new program, I guess, and it's called the Developers Compass. And essentially what it is that uh, we're going to have a look at all of my lessons that I've learned over the times, and then I can coach people on how to go and create companies like what I went and did, and then do it with a better structure, do it with better goals in mind, and then do it in a more sustainable way. So this is really, really good for people who are beginners. This is really good for people who want like doing a couple of deals or something like that. They want to take it to the next level. This is really good for anyone like that. So I feel like I'm really good at marketing. Marketing seems to be something which I'm really good at naturally. But what we would go and do is we would go, okay, who are you? What are you trying to achieve? Then what we would do is we would set your goals and we're deleting all of the other deals. We're trying to get rid of the fluff, right? And then we're trying to make you into a master of that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to do reverse visos on that goal. And essentially it's like when we went from a normal splitter to a 600 square meter splitter. We're going to go, okay, what do I want? Why do I want it? Who is already doing it? How are they doing it? And then how can I go and do it? So I teach you that whole process. We set your goals, we find a strategy that suits, we do the reverse visos, we learn what the good deals are, and then we learn how to go and get them. So that's a new program that we're creating. It's called the Developers Compass. So we'll continue talking about that over time. So if you got any questions, I need to create content. So send any questions you may have to sales@repurposegroup.com.au. Sales@repurposegroup.com.au. Essentially, if you got any questions, if you want to send me praises, awesome. You want to send me abuse, whatever, send it there. Let's go for that, and then I'll start creating content based on those sort of things. All right, guys. So that is the first episode. Next one we are going to break down is where we renovated a Queenslander, lifted it, builded a driveway underneath it, and then built two townhouses in the backyard. This is based on screw rooming houses. I didn't get paid. And now what we're going and doing is a chunk deal. And we're doing this because I will get paid from it. So that is what we're breaking down next time. All right, guys. Thanks heaps for your time.